Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this EMA webinar. And please note that this session is being recorded and will be made available through EMA corporate website and YouTube channel. Throughout the session, you'll be able to use Slido to ask us questions. And in Slido, you may opt to remain anonymous. By staying in the webinar and using Slido, you are giving us consent to process your personal data as explained in our privacy statement. So please note the webinar is being recorded. As I mentioned throughout the webinar, please ask us the question using the Slido code that you can see on this particular slide, and also as a footer in each and every slide in this presentation. Throughout the Slido and the session, you can send and upvote the questions that you want to hear answered. The questions will be addressed in the meantime by other colleagues present in the webinar, and the questions not addressed during the session will be addressed at the end. There is a Q&A part where we can discuss the most voted questions. Questions not addressed during this specific session may be addressed in subsequent webinars of the SPOR week, and eventually we will also reuse some of the most frequently asked questions for an FAQ document, which we publish on the SPOR portal. So welcome to this particular webinar on SPOR data governance. My name is Isabel Shishiro. I am the head of Regulatory Data Management Service, which is the service responsible for SPOR and XEVMPD, and the service that provides data management for the benefit of the network. This week, we have the pleasure to host a series of webinars of different aspects of the service that we provide. And in addition to the usual substance, organization, referential, and XEVMPD webinars, we have today a new webinar on SPOR data governance, and also a webinar this afternoon covering the service desk for SPOR and XEVMPD. We hope you can join us for more sessions throughout the week. Now, in the interest of improving the performance of the recording, I will switch off the camera temporarily, and I will be back with the camera towards the end when I address the questions from the audience. Thank you very much. See you at the end. So today's webinar on SPOR data governance intends to show how SPOR data is governed, and in doing so, it will provide an introduction to the other topics of the SPOR week. With the recent introduction of agile transformation, we also hope to show how data governance has been adapted to comply with these changes. The agenda today will focus on providing an overview of what is the SPOR data governance framework and the key aspects that we consider in our governance. And then we will dive into these 5 aspects that compose it. The first being strategy, second, processes, third, policies and standards, fourth, organization structure, roles and responsibilities, and last, enablement. At the end, we will conclude with some key takeaways, and there will also be 15 minutes to answer questions that may not have been addressed during the session. So, starting with what is SPOR data governance framework? So let's review a key concept. What will we be talking about? Throughout this presentation, you will see that we touch upon 3 distinct areas: data management, data governance, and IT enablement or delivery. Data management refers to day-to-day management of SPOR data as agreed, meaning it refers to the execution and monitoring of initiatives, policies, applications, processes that deliver and control the data. This comprises several areas of knowledge that you can see in the gray circle in the center. And these areas of knowledge have been defined before SPOR first went into operation, such as data modeling, data storage, operations, security, etc. Today, we will only cover data management superficially, and the details of exactly what we do for data management will be further elaborated on the other webinars for each of the domains of SPOR. With regards to the second area, and the one critical to today's webinar, data governance will focus on how SPOR data is managed and used. Data governance, it's all about the planning, oversight, and control over data. It guides how an organization performs all data management functions. It also facilitates implementation of regulatory data requirements, and it facilitates data ownership, communication, reporting, and decision making. Data governance may provide input demand for technology changes, but it does not necessarily govern it. And a data governance is specifically the area that we will focus on today's webinar. Last, we have a support area referring to IT enablement. Although IT enablement is the process that facilitates the changes and updates to the IT landscape, today we will only focus on new and changed IT capabilities to manage and govern SPOR data, so not the overview of IT enablement as a whole. So throughout the presentation, we will be focusing mostly on data governance, but we will also touch upon data management and IT enablement. So when we talk about SPOR data governance framework, what concretely are we talking about? And for SPOR, we have tailored key aspects from the data management best practices from the data management body of knowledge. So we will be focusing on strategy, processes, policies and standards, organization and roles, and last, enablement. And concretely, what do each of these five aspects refer to? So we considered strategy because it provides the focus and high-level course of action towards data goals. We consider processes because it provides a model of data management, not only in the context of business processes, the regulatory business processes, as well as a model for consistent and adequate processing of data so that we always manage the data in the same way. We considered policies and standards which provide the principles that structured how the data should be handled. We also considered organization roles and responsibilities, which provide the rules for consultation, reporting, decision making, and structures. Last, with regards to enablement, we considered two things: the way to ensure continuous improvement of data management and the way to build a data driven culture. So, starting with the first aspect with regards to strategy. The SPOR vision has been set out by the EU network to provide master data quality services on four domains: substances, products, organizations, and referentials. And these services would enhance the quality of medicinal product data used by the network, the pharmaceutical industry, and other stakeholders to support regulatory activities in EU. We, in the strategy and how we turn strategy into planning, we consider first and foremost the business strategies, the European Medicines Regulatory Network strategies. And these refer to the Regulatory Science Strategy, the Medicines Agency's Network Strategy, and the European Medicines Regulatory Network Data Standardization Strategy. So overall, these strategies provide a long-term direction for the business areas. In the second area, we transpose those business interests into high investments, particularly around IT delivery. And we look at the EMA programming document and the network portfolio roadmap to align the use of data with business and IT capabilities and prioritize the investments and the development. Last, we look at these IT investments and we have a SPOR operational planning. And this planning provides focus on data management activities so that the data quality improvements align with the expected business value and with the portfolio board's prioritization. So the way to turn strategy into planning is looking at what are the business drivers, and those are provided by the strategies. What are the high investments that the network will do in terms of IT delivery capabilities and other deliverables, and we turn that into a yearly operational data management plan, which we share via SPOR webinars. So if we look at the first layer in terms of the regulatory strategies and the long-term direction of the business areas, we see that there is an EMA regulatory science strategy up to 2025, and SPOR supports the key goals of that strategy. Specifically on the European Medicines Agency network strategy, also to 2025, there are 6 priorities for the network, and SPOR is specifically mentioned in that network strategy in 5 of those 6 priorities. So the first priority of that strategy is availability and accessibility of medicines. And it specifically mentioned that SPOR can provide information on marketing status, and this data will be included in SPOR. If we look at the second priority, data analytics, digital tools, and digital transformations, the role of SPOR and of fully digitalizing deliverables is specifically mentioned in this goal for the network. In terms of innovation, we also support the digitalization of clinical trials and provide digital tools that support exchanges across all the clinical trial partners. And in the next goal, with regards to supply chain challenges, there's specific reference about enhancing linkages in medicinal product and supply chain information. There's also a reference to increasing inspections and the role of SPOR to maximize the benefits and the collaboration and contribution with non-EU regulators like FDA. Last but not least, with the goal to provide sustainability of the network and operational excellence, SPOR is also mentioned as it provides for efficiency gains and supports that operational excellence. The last strategy on this list is about the European Medicines Regulatory Network data standardization strategy. And again, even on that strategy, there's a full chapter dedicated to SPOR IDMP and the standardization of medicinal product. There's also a reference of the use of OMS for unique manufacturing facilities. Now, if we look at main investments and how to align the use of data with business and IT capability development priorities, the portfolio roadmap is driving the work in SPOR in 2 ways. First, the portfolio activities. There are portfolio activities that support SPOR IT enablement as such, i.e., portfolio activities that deliver new SPOR capabilities. And on the second hand, there's also portfolio activities that, although they don't deliver new capabilities for SPOR, they require SPOR operational work to support those other portfolio activities. So if we look at the first half of this table, we can see that there are some portfolio activities supporting new SPOR capabilities. Nothing specific with regards to referentials and organizations, but the work that has been planned for substance and particular product, there's major IT enablement work that is now part of the portfolio roadmap for the next couple of years. Specifically on substance, we have the need for a portal to access and provide transparency around substance data. And there's also a desire to do an integration of data across SMS and USRS solutions to improve substance data quality. With regards to work on products, there's work on product management services ongoing, mostly a migration, and this work is foreseen to support web-based electronic application form for variations and electronic product information. It also foreseen to support the European Shortages Management Platform. On the second part of this table, we see that there's also activities that drive SPOR operational work, particularly on referentials and organizations where there's no IT development, there's still work operational that needs to happen. RMS is heavily involved in preparing lists for new solutions, examples being the real world data lists, and you'll see this in RMS plans. Organizations is heavily preparing to map and register new organization to support new stakeholders. An example of this is the manufacturers of medical devices. On the substance side, we also have operational work planned to enrich data to support new developments, and an example being to support the antimicrobial sales and use, the ASU project, with enriching it with relationships, conversions, molecular weight, and other information needed to analyze antimicrobial sales. Last, on the product side, we are also supporting the SciMed centralized products and also non-centralized products migration from XEVMPD. And in doing so, there's operational work to support data cleansing in our centralized product database and to ensure that for centralized products, we have a compliance check. Now, how do we translate these portfolio priorities into operational objectives? So my service is responsible for the SPOR data services, and we have, in a nutshell, three key objectives for 2023. The first objective is, of course, to deliver efficient and effective regulatory data services. First and foremost, we provide and improve data management services. We maintain and improve the data quality of SPOR data, but you can see high on the priority list, and this was based on customer feedback, we have to maintain and improve the customer services. And I will explain later what that means. Close to our heart, we have an objective to improve customer satisfaction and success. And based on customer feedback, we have an objective to provide easy to use documentation to our customers and to showcase the value of data and data service through engagements like this one and this particular week. We also have a third objective to keep modernizing data and information management, and we do so by supporting information management, modernization of our processes and our technical landscape, but also to supporting prioritized IT work with data, like the example of projects on the electronic application form, IRIS, electronic product information, and shortage of medicines and medical devices. So we look at these objectives, and the way to ensure data quality improvements align with the expected business value is through what we call operational plans. You will see for each SPOR data service that these objectives are translated into an annual operational plan that would look something like this. And you will have one plan per SPOR domain. These plans are shared via the SPOR webinars, which happen twice a year. And if you attend the other webinars in this week, you will see exactly what are the activities that we are planning to deliver throughout 2023 to support the portfolio and the strategy of the network. So now if we move into processes, first and foremost, we have what we call operating models, which provide a holistic and agreed upon view of data and management activities in the context of business operations. So operating models is how does data management fit into the overview of business regulatory processes. With regards to SPOR, the operating model is that industry and NCAs pre-register or update SPOR data before they submit regulatory applications or other submissions. And this operating model has been defined and agreed by the SPOR task force, which contain human and veterinary industry association representatives, as well as NCAs and EMA. With regards to XEVMPD operating model, the model is that industry submits authorized product data after approval, and EMA requests industry to standardize data, or EMA standardizes certain elements on industry's behalf. Yet again, this model has been defined and agreed by Article 57 Implementation Group, which had human industry associations representatives as well as EMA. So what exactly is this model? So putting it into a diagram, we see at the top left-hand corner that there is a pre-registration. Applicants requests new and updated substance, organization, and referential data before their regulatory applications. Then the applicants submit these regulatory applications via the electronic application forms to the regulators, who assess the application and informs the applicant of outcome. And once approved, today the applicant updates their approved product data in XEVMPD and Article 57 database. What you will hear and what our intent, the plans for the future, is that applicants and MAHs will submit the regulatory applications to regulators, but that same data is used to update the regulatory systems as well as PMS, so that the product data can be reused in many regulatory procedures and use cases, be it approval of new variations, be it pharmacovigilance, be it other processes in the network. Now, if we dive into what exactly happens in that top left-hand box of the SPOR pre-registration, we have basically two customer-facing processes. We have a process that we call data stewardship, and this is mostly about change requests, which are requests of new and updated or deleted data upon user request. But we also have what we call data services, which are a more service-led data curation. And this is about proactive data curation with mappings, enrichments, deltas, and also product validation, which I will explain later on. It's also about cleansing and identified corrections of this data. In addition to this data stewardship process, we also provide what we call customer services. And this is supporting customers directly with any request of information or questions that they may have, with any requested more complex services that we can't do with data stewardship, or even addressing incidents and issues that get reported to us. A bit more on the back end, and to ensure that we provide good quality services, we have a layer that we call data quality management. And starting at the top, for each of the activities that we perform, be it a change request, be it a data service, be it a customer service, we do what we call quality control. So we sample a few of those tasks and we check it to make sure that they're correctly performed and consistently performed. In addition to that, and because we sample about 20% of the activities that we do, we also look across all of the data to make sure that we monitor and we investigate patterns and things that might be wrong. And we call this data profiling. And last, we also do something we call quality assurance, which is about root cause analysis and structural process improvements. So with data quality management, we typically look at everything that we process, we look at data, and we try to address proactively how to improve it. The last layer of processes, we call that service management. And this is about service coordination with data governance, which is the topic of today's webinar. How do we change how data is managed and used? And also, how do we relate with IT delivery? And there's also an aspect of performance management, looking at invoicing the people that work with us, looking at performance indicators, reporting, seeing how well we're performing, and very importantly to us, getting feedback of customer satisfaction. So this provides an overview of the main processes that we perform in SPOR, and the details of each of the SPOR domains will be elaborated on individual webinars throughout this week. Now, if we look at the first of the processes about change request process, the process for change request starts with the requester submitting a change request on OMS, SMS, or RMS, and very importantly, including any relevant supporting document to support the claim or the request that they are making. The data stewards will validate this request using guidance, reference, and other tools that we have specified, and that will vary for each specific domain. And then last, there's an approval or rejection step. There is a defined timeline that we call service level agreement, whereby the change request is approved or rejected. And if there is a disagreement by the client, there's also the possibility to raise a ticket in service desk indicating the change request number. Very importantly, the data stewards consults with the data owner for the approval or rejection of this request. Specifically for substance, the substance data owner is what we call the substance validation group, which is a group of experts with scientific expertise that define the rules whereby we can approve or reject or create substances. Although we don't liaise directly with them, we follow the rules that have been provided by the substance validation group. With regards to organizations, EMA is the data owner. So we provide and follow the rules that have been discussed and agreed with the EU network. And with regards to referential data, there's more than 200 lists at the moment in RMS, and each individual list has an assigned list owner. There are lists owned by EDQM, lists owned by ISO, by MSSO, WHO, EMA, and for each of the lists, there's a specific set of rules that need to be followed to approve or reject change requests for new terms or new lists. Now, if we think about data services, the proactive creation of data, there's specifically four areas or four tasks that we do. We do delta tasks, and delta tasks refer to continuous updates from major systems and review of changes to data in these source systems. And examples of this are continuous updates from OMS. For example, we have the deltas of new organizations from EV, new and updated MAHs and sponsors that are created in XEVMPD. For RMS, we have, for example, the EDQM deltas, new and updated terms across all EDQM lists, as well as updates from ATC Human, ATC Vet, VEDRA, and MEDRA. The result of these tasks is that we expect to have a minimized burden on SPOR users by removing the need for change requests by these users. So that's why we do this proactive work. If we move on to enrichments, we're talking about proactively completing SPOR data with reference information. And again, in OMS, the example of this would be the address doctor enrichments with completing address data with postcodes, geocoordinates, states, districts. Also, here we expect that we would have improved data quality in support of the regulatory use of the data. If we look at the third area of data services that we call cleansing and corrections, this is about reviewing the data to identify errors in order to correct and standardize it against the established reference information and data quality rules. And here we have an example of OMS that will be explained this week about currency check. We also have extensive examples in SMS about the SVG cleansing of substances and other pre-cleansing of substance types and substance casing and OPA-DRYs. So we do this to minimize the burden of SPOR users due to improved data quality and also to avoid change requests being submitted by users. Last, we have an activity that we call mappings, which is matching data existing in legacy systems to SPOR. And this consists in creating and updating data in SPOR as needed. This supports data migrations and implementation of SPOR in other systems. So if we look at proactive data services provided by the team, we have in essence four types, and all of them result or are expected to result in better data quality and minimized burden for our users. The next process that we have is customer service. And again, this is triggered by the customer needing something from EMA, and the customer submits a ticket. There's a first level triage of that ticket to see what is the nature of the issue. Is it an IT issue? Is it a business issue? Who's the responsible team? And what is the applicable service level agreement, i.e., the timeline that this issue needs to be resolved? There's typically two types of issues. It could be of an IT nature, and it could be from a business nature. So there will be two dedicated teams that will be involved in the resolution of the issue. At the end, and very importantly, the customer is asked to review and confirm the resolution of this request, either by indicating that it has been fulfilled and the ticket could be closed, or to reopen the ticket so that it can be followed up. Typically, in terms of SLA, we provide a triage of each and every ticket within one working day, but depending on the nature of the issue, it could be resolved within 5 working days, but it could also be resolved within 22 working days, so about a month. Now, the next set of processes is about SPOR data quality management. And as I mentioned before, we have two ways of doing this. So we have a proactive way of doing it by looking at every activity, every task that we process, and we routinely sample and inspect around 20% of the tasks that we do. All those tasks are also re-inspected by EMA to make sure that the results of that quality control are correct. And because we only inspect 20%, we also look across all of the data that we have in the database, and we build what we call profiles, which are reports that identify data that does not meet the data quality rules. Routinely, we also perform quality assurance, which is when we detect errors, we looked at root causes, we look at feasible preventive actions, and we implement feasible actions and also process improvements to make sure that the errors that we've spotted do not reoccur. Every error that is detected is qualified as a defect, and every defect is classified into major or minor. Identified defects and errors are also corrected, and they are corrected by what we call data services. And we can also have a reactive approach, which is led by our customers. So customers can also tell us if they spot any data quality issues via the service desk, and these are classified as incidents. Now, if we look at the next aspect of the framework, SPOR data governance framework, we will be covering policies and standards. So policies provide a broad principle of operation and give structure of how data handling should happen during the life cycle of the data. SPOR applies international standards such as ISO, IDMP, and FIRE. So SPOR implements ISO 11238 for substances, 11239 for pharmaceutical dose forms, units of presentation, routes of administration, and packages, 11240 for units of measurements, 616 for pharmaceutical product information, and 615 for PHPID. SPOR also applies HL7 messaging specifications, which are messages used to exchange IDMP information, and these are based in the FIRE. We apply also EMA policies, which are published on EMA corporate website, and examples of these policies can be the EMA's integrated quality management system, policy on records management, policy on document classification, and other security policies. SPOR policies and data quality rules are defined for domain-specific documentation. So for each of the SPOR domains, there's also specific policies. Examples being there's OMS data quality rules, and these are the policies whereby we manage OMS data. For RMS, the policies are specified in each individual list information document, and for XEVMPD, there's also available guidance on how we manage not just the data, but also the data quality processes applicable to XEVMPD. The domain-specific policies and rules will be further elaborated during the other webinars throughout this week. Now, where can you find information on SPOR and XEVMPD documents? So first, you can find information on EMA corporate website, where you can find information on the SPOR vision and general introduction to the projects. You can also find SPOR-related information and documents. And there's also a webpage dedicated to XEVMPD data submission requirements for marketing authorization holders and sponsors. If you need to register, you can look at the EMA account management portal, where you can find guidance on how to obtain access to EMA systems, including SPOR and XEVMPD, and where you can also create a new EMA account and request SPOR user roles or XEVMPD user roles. Specific documentation on SPOR and XEVMPD are available in the SPOR portal and also in the EV restricted area. You can find in the SPOR portal lots of SPOR reference documentation like templates for user registration and affiliation, like the user manual, process guidance on change requests and validation, the policies and data quality guidance, service level agreements, statistics, and frequently asked questions. You can also find a lot of information on XEVMPD user support section, which provides lots of technical documentation of how to submit information to XEVMPD. Next, we also provide training opportunities, and a lot of the videos and recordings of these webinars are now available in the EMA info channel, where you can see not just the presentation, but also tips and tricks and the questions that have been previously raised by other users in previous webinars. We provide XEVMPD e-learning and we also provide training for XEVMPD organized by DIA. Last, for anything that you need that is not found in any of these other sources or documents, you can raise a question, a request to EMA Service Desk, and this can be submitted through the ServiceNow portal. Moving on to the fourth pillar of the SPOR data governance framework, we cover organization and roles and responsibilities. So organization structure, roles and responsibilities provide a model in which the stakeholders' reporting and decision-making lines are clearly defined. And again, I remind here that there's three distinct areas of competency and responsibility. There's data management, data governance about control, and IT delivery about delivering new IT capabilities. Up to 2022, we had what we call the SPOR task force, which had stakeholder groups and focus groups covering both data governance as well as IT delivery responsibilities, because we were still supporting the delivery of the SPOR services. From 2023, the responsibilities of the SPOR IT delivery have transitioned to agile governance, and the data governance responsibilities have been taken up by the SPOR key user group and the EU Network Data Board, as I will explain in subsequent slides. So if we look at the different areas of competency and responsibility, who does what? And again, here there's a slight division of SPOR data governance and data governance as a whole. So starting with the top left-hand side, if we think about SPOR data management, which refers to the day-to-day management of SPOR data, as agreed previously by SPOR Task Force and the network, there's actually three key roles that we need to allude to. There's a role of service owner and manager, which has the accountability and responsibility for SPOR data services. There's the role of EMA data stewards, which execute the data management processes day to day. And very importantly, there's the role of the SPOR business lead, which collects all the input on data quality, on process, on change requests, and is empowered to implement certain changes to SPOR data management. If we move on to the right top corner of the slide, and we start thinking of how we govern how the SPOR data is managed, there's three particular roles that are of relevance. We have the key user group, which is a group of representatives of industry and NCAs that collect input from users and advises the SPOR team on data management. So they advise on strategy, process, policies, all the aspects that we're covering here today. The SPOR business lead is allowed to decide to make small changes to the SPOR data management, and these refer to changes that have no significant impact to the users. And when there are major changes, there is an escalation point to what we call the EU Network Data Board that will decide on major changes to SPOR data management as a whole. If we move to the bottom right-hand side of the slide, and we start thinking of how we govern how SPOR data is used and applied into business processes, we have specifically also three roles. We have the Network Data Board, which will advise on process and alignment of best practices across different business areas. We have also the SPOR business lead that collects input, but very importantly, we have a new role that we call process owner. And this could be a user, could be a project group, is the owner of a specific regulatory process. And it is this process owner that provides the data requirements to SPOR and that ultimately decides how to use SPOR in its business process and its regulatory context. Last, on the IT delivery side, when we need new or changed IT capabilities to manage and govern SPOR areas, SPOR data, we have yet again the SPOR business lead collecting the demand and the need via process owners, the key user group, or even service desk. So the SPOR business lead collects input from different sources. It will then liaise with what we call the value stream owner and value stream manager to mobilize an activity in the portfolio of the network. Then it will be taken to portfolio board and the NPAC, who prioritize the portfolio and the sequence of activities that will be implemented next. And we have also the network data board providing advice on what is the priority and what are the required new data capabilities that bring value through the data. Some aspects of this with regards to the mandate of EU Network Data Board are still under discussion, but this is the latest information we have of what is likely to be the areas of responsibility of the different groups. Central to this, we have the role of the SPOR business lead and SPOR product owner that coordinates all this input via planning and coordination of the day-to-day data management, via an overview of all the data management issues that are brought to his attention via the different groups, who's empowered to decide minor data changes, who provides an overview of demand needs of IT changes, and also coordinates the implementation not just of the data management activities, but also of new IT capabilities. Now, if we think about SPOR data management, how is this structured and what are the reporting and decision lines? So it's important to think that SPOR data management, the day-to-day management of SPOR, is divided in three layers. The first layer we call service ownership, which provides the overall accountability and responsibility for the SPOR data services and ensures that there's a quality and availability of these data services for the network. The second layer we call data stewardship that ensures that data processes, policies, and standards are in place and are being followed in day-to-day operations. And very importantly, we have the concept of data ownership. For each of the domains, there's a decision body that decides how to create and modify the data, and even who to share it with and how to restrict access to the data that we manage. So if we look at the top, the service ownership, the responsibility of the SPOR data services lies with the EMA and the information management division, which is led by Hilmar Hamann, and specifically in the core services department led by Christophe Pellichammer. And day to day, I am responsible for the provision of SPOR services, so I am the service manager. If you want to look hierarchically of where do these services, where are they handled, our service is called regulatory data management. So day to day, each of the SPOR domains is led by a business lead, and we have a dedicated assigned business lead per domain. We have Pedro responsible for substances, Marcos and Veronica for products, Deborah responsible for organizations, and Jaume responsible for referentials. And you'll have the pleasure to hear from them directly again in other webinars throughout the week. These business leads are supported by a team of dedicated data stewards that support the activities for each of the domains. And the data stewards, as well as the business lead, liaise frequently with the data owners that I've mentioned before to decide how to change the data that they manage. Now, if we think about how to govern changes to how we manage SPOR, we also have three layers. We have a layer that we call data governance that controls the management and use of data and decides on major changes to SPOR, changes that have an impact. And for this, you can see that there's a series of bodies that represent the network, that represent the stakeholders, and that provide a strategy way forward that represents the needs of these stakeholders. Central to this, we have the role of the EU Network Data Board. In addition to that, we also have a layer that we call data leadership. And this layer ensures that there is agility in the data management changes, that not everything is escalated. So for small changes, the different domain business leads are empowered to apply and decide those small changes so that there is no delay in rolling out the benefits of those small changes. And last, we also have ensured that the users are represented throughout the involvement of the key user group that has industry and NCA participation and ensures that their views are also considered. Now, if we look at examples of how the data is managed, what is the flow of events that typically happens? So typically day to day, the data management and the collection of issues is done by the EMA data stewards. And when there's enough issues, these issues and data quality concerns and process get escalated to the SPOR business lead. The business lead may escalate and consult with the key user group that will advise on changes to SPOR data management, and the SPOR business lead can make minor decisions. And when there is significant changes, the EU Network Data Board is involved to provide advice and a decision that will support the changes to how SPOR data is actually managed. If we think about how do we govern how the data is used, typically this actually starts with the key user groups and the users collecting feedback on how SPOR is used in different processes. EMA data stewards can also collect input, but typically it is the users who bring this up to the attention of the SPOR business lead. The SPOR business lead will escalate the issues to EU Network Data Board, who will advise the process owners. But here, yet again, ultimately, it is the process owner who decides what data requirements and how to implement SPOR in its business area. If there are changes that need to be applicable to the way that SPOR data is managed, the SPOR business lead will implement these changes and pass it back for day-to-day execution by the EMA data stewards. If we think about how to govern IT delivery linked to data management capabilities, typically the business lead, or in agile terms, the SPOR product owner, will collect input from different sources, from the service desk and change requests, from the key user group or other users, and even from the process owners. He will then liaise with the value stream owner and value stream manager to build an epic and have it prioritized. Prioritization will be done by portfolio boards and NPAC, and there's also foreseen that the network data board may advise on the priority of these new capabilities. Moving on to IT delivery and structure. So again, at the top layer, there is involvement of different bodies that provide strategic input for the major investment that is required for IT delivery. And the main body for prioritization is the portfolio board. At the middle level, we have the value streams that provide and arrange the delivery of IT capabilities into values, areas of value, and provide tactical input. We have currently 5 different value streams: one for managing the agency, one for research and development, one for product lifecycle management, one for monitoring, and one for technology lifecycle management and information security. At the bottom level of this structure, we have different product teams which are responsible for the implementation of the different products and the different solutions. And we have already major work assigned for PMS and SMS. Uh, the work will be picked up by PMS, the work will be picked up by the product lifecycle management value stream, and the work on SMS is likely to be picked up on the research development value stream. Currently, there is no major work plan for OMS and RMS. And although there is assigned product owners and an assigned value stream responsible to implement it, if there is a need to implement major IT capabilities around OMS and SMS. Now, how can stakeholders contribute to the IT delivery? Stakeholders can contribute to the portfolio roadmap and sequence of epics by advising on their priorities. Industry is involved via EMA industry bilaterals and via the strategic portfolio review, and network is involved via the NICTAG and NPAC involvement in quarterly strategic portfolio reviews in quarterly portfolio syncs. Stakeholders can also contribute to the definition of the solutions themselves. Designated experts can be involved as subject matter experts, and they can participate in system testing or even ad hoc consultations. More importantly, anybody can provide feedback to the development of the solutions via the quarterly system demos, which are open to the public. So anybody can provide input to how the solutions are being delivered. Moving on to the last area of the SPOR data governance framework, we will be touching upon enablement. And enablement is twofold and aims to ensure continuous improvement of the data management and build on the data-driven culture. With regards to the continuous improvement, it's imperative that decisions are made based on data and therefore precise measures. So we have defined key performance indicators to analyze how we're performing and where to put our focus. We have key performance indicators on volumetrics that look at what data is being managed, how does it grow, what data is being more updated or less updated. We have indicators on data management, the types of activities, whether we're doing more change requests, data services, customer services, and very important to customers, how are we adhering to the service level agreements and the timelines that we commit to doing these activities in. We also look at quality of the service. So for each of the service, as I mentioned, we quantify the number of errors that we've detected and we extrapolate for the rest what is the level of data quality for that particular activity. And last, we also have data quality specific metrics via the data quality profiling reports that we build. Some of these things we monitor monthly, some of these things we monitor quarterly, depends on the importance of these performance indicators. The key metrics are shared with stakeholders for transparency. So the statistics are reported in the SPOR webinars 2 times per year. And you will see for each of the other webinars a specific section on what they're doing and how they're performing. And we provide an aggregated yearly statistics together with the results of the customer satisfaction survey, which is also available in the SPOR portal. We are doing some work to improve the reporting and business intelligence capabilities to enhance the transparency of these key performance indicators and provide a little bit more self-service capabilities to our users. But there's no concrete deadline for that as of yet. So as an example, a very simple example of the data that we measure, as of January 2023, we had over 63,000 substances registered, 1.4 million products, of which nearly half of them are still active products in XEVMPD. We have 45,000 organizations and nearly twice as much of locations in OMS. And even in referentials, we have, I believe, right now more than 200 lists. And we have a lot more terms registered in referentials than we had in OMS and SMS together. In terms of change rate of this data throughout 2022, data continues to grow significantly, particularly in the OMS area, but maybe worth to note that, for example, for referentials where people assume that there is not much happening, you can see that we are continuing to add 5% of new list per year, and we are updating 10%, so quite a significant number of lists and terms within a year as a result of RMS activities. Now, if we think of the second part of enablement, which is engagement with our users, we have 3 measures in place. First and foremost, we have these webinars that we're trying to hold at least a minimum of 2 times per year. And very importantly, we have been doing for the last few years what we call a customer satisfaction survey. This survey is sent to registered SPOR users. It's run at the end of the year, And the results of the service are normally compared with previous years to see if we've improved or not our performance. The results are published in the SPOR portal. And the feedback that users gave us is very important and used to identify areas of improvement and to plan the work for the following year. So your opinion really matters to us. We do look at these results very closely. So please, if you receive an email to participate in the next customer satisfaction survey, which is expected to happen in Q4 this year, please participate. Last, we also provide training, and very importantly, we have the videos of all the SPOR webinars with tips and tricks, as well as the questions raised by other users or yourself. We have the XEVMPD e-learning and also the training provided by DIA. So if you want to see just an extract of what are the key takeaways from last year's customer satisfaction survey, overall, customers are still generally satisfied with all the domains of the SPOR data services. 77% of customers rated the data services as good or excellent, and this is a 17% increase compared to last year. 79% rated the data quality as good and excellent, and this is a 13% increase compared to 2021. Overall, we have estimated that we have a rating of 80% customer satisfaction. This is a 6% increase, and it's actually a higher result than many public services in other domains. Also, with regards to improvements, we looked at areas where we didn't score so well, and the areas where we had the lowest scores are listed here as improvements, and we will see a proposed action in our operational plan for 2023. The key area of dissatisfaction, let's say, is with SPOR Service Desk. And as a result, we will be reviewing the Service Desk answers throughout the year. We will also increase the quality control of the answers that we provide to users. And you will see that this afternoon, we also have a webinar dedicated to SPOR Service Desk. Another area that has been pointed by users was SPOR documentation. So together with the key user group, we will be reviewing, consolidating, and simplifying the documentation on SPOR and helping signpost where to find it and how to use it. We have received feedback that product validation is not always clear. So we aim to increase the XEVMPD webinars. There will be one also this week, and the communications around XEVMPD. And last, the area that still displays the lowest results is OMS. So you will see that OMS plan is a lot busier than the rest, and the focus will be given on improving OMS service desk and increasing any profiling and proactive correction of OMS data. Now, if you want to stay connected to work on SPOR and XEVMPD, please dial in to the rest of the webinars this week, and there will be a repeat of these webinars in the second half of the week, probably around September or October, and the final dates will be announced via EMA's website event page. We will also launch the SPOR customer satisfaction survey right after the webinar, so likely around October and November. And this will be announced via the webinars itself that will be held a month before and via dedicated emails to SPOR registered users. So wrapping up, after all these informations on SPOR data governance, what are the key takeaways? So if we look at each of the 5 pillars and starting with strategy, we have EU strategies, we have the network portfolio roadmap, and as a result, we have a defined SPOR operational data management planning in place that enables to focus the action around the value of data. In terms of processes, we have agreed operating models for SPOR and XEVMPD. We also have data management processes that are defined and operational and support the users. The data is being consistently and adequately processed. With regards to policies and standards, we apply mostly international standards as well as EMA policies, but there's a wealth of domain-specific policies and data quality rules available for each domain, particularly in the SPOR portal or XEVMPD web pages. With regards to organizations' roles and responsibilities, there's clear governance structures with reporting and decision-making lines that are clearly defined. We have the areas of data management, SPOR data governance, and IT delivery roles and responsibilities are also defined across different stakeholders. Last, with regards to enablement, we have metrics, monitoring, and reporting in place, and these are made available to stakeholders. The engagement takes place via the webinars and, very importantly to us, via the customer satisfaction survey. So with the webinar, we conclude that we have a structured approach to SPOR data governance, which is based on best practices for data management. EMA Agile Transformation is changing how IT enablement is planned and executed, and that, of course, influences how SPOR data management teams prioritizes its work. Day to day, the SPOR team provides data services that cover data management, data governance, and also support IT enablement. And we hope that this presentation we have explained enough how SPOR data is currently managed and governed. And we also hope that this will provide an introduction and context to the remaining webinars this week. You will be able to find more details then. Now, I'm slightly ahead of time, so I suppose it's good news. And I can hand over to the questions in Slido.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we have some questions for you here. Isabel, so if you are able to read them.
So where can we find the latest portfolio roadmap? So I believe there's a network and agile transformation web page. In that page, I don't believe that the portfolio roadmap is published, but there is an intention to do so. And typically, the portfolio roadmap is shared with stakeholders in the quarterly strategic portfolio review and in the bilaterals with industry. We can try to get a hold and see if we get details of when exactly this roadmap will be published with a wider audience.
Okay, there is another question.
The EMA CV lists are not published since February 2023. I suppose this is the XEVMPD controlled vocabulary lists. And it says today for a new term requested and created in RMS, there is no EV code in the mapping section. How can we retrieve the EV code? Will you populate each EV code in RMS from EV-Web in the future terms? Yes. So in short, we will populate each and every EV code in RMS. We are mapping and progressing that activity as we speak before we refresh it in RMS and you can download it. I believe you'll find further details of this specifically in the XEVMPD webinar and also in RMS webinar. Both of those webinars talk about the details of when exactly those activities will occur.
Thank you.
Could you please confirm the location of the controlled vocabulary pick list related to XEVMPD organization pick list in OMS? I'm not sure I followed the question. So there won't be a specific XEVMPD pick list in OMS. OMS is one single list, and some of the organizations in OMS will have the EV codes if they are required for XEVMPD. The same thing for the RMS lists. So for the dosage form list, some terms will have the EV codes, some might not necessarily have it. And that's how you will have to use those lists. There's a comment there. Only two XEVMPD lists are available in RMS. Um, some lists available in RMS do not have XEVMPD in the name. It does not mean that it's not used. Like, for example, the dosage form list is used by XEVMPD, but it's not unique or specific to XEVMPD. It's shared with PMS, with electronic application form, with other systems as well. So the list itself is used in XEVMPD, but does not necessarily have it as part of its name. Does the quality control data profiling include natural language processing of source documents like SMPCs? This is something we're looking into and scraping documents and seeing how we can automate some of those processes. But at the moment, we haven't found a reliable way. So, in short, no. Can you please explain how to get the search results from national? Oh, um, I
Yes,
was
is the
looking at
is
that.
this one?
Can,
Yes.
can you please explain how to get the search results from National Postal Services, as there are several options like state, apartment, suite, other, which we are not aware of? Um, I'm not sure I follow the question. So the National Postal Services list is something internal we have. It's not something we can share, but of course it's also in the public domain. And I don't follow the part about state, apartment, suite, or other. So either you can refine it, or this is a question that is probably best addressed in the OMS webinar, where there is specific slides on address doctor and National Postal Services. How often? Oh, which one? How
The first one, please. Thank you.
how EMA is measuring data quality and ensuring the SPOR data is up to date in EMA systems. So, we measure the data quality in SPOR, and I try to explain that. So we measure the activities that we perform as well as looking at the data, and we find thresholds of how many duplicates we can have, how many missing fields we can allow to have missing data or not. That we measure, and we have specific KPIs. How are we ensuring that the data is corrected across other systems? So right now there's architectural principles. There's best practices in terms of synchronization of data from SPOR to other systems. So we provide advice on how best to synchronize the data. But once the data is copied, synchronized, transposed into a given business system or business process, we really don't know how the data is used, or we can't enforce. That's why I mentioned that it's very important the role of the process owner, which could be a user or a system group that defines how frequently the data is synchronized, what are the criteria for data quality in each specific process. So in short, we measure the data quality in SPOR. We have strict processes and defined key performance indicators for that. We make the best data available to each of the systems, but we cannot determine how the systems synchronize or align the data from SPOR into their business processes. Why is a separate database created as EUSRS if it is GSRS baseline data? It creates multiple sources, which is a deviation from one source of truth approach of IDMP. This is a complex topic. So first of all, EUSRS and GSRS, those are two softwares that are very similar. So they use the same software. EUSRS has European substance data. GSRS has US substance data. Data is aligned as much as possible across Europe and US, but of course, there's different needs and requirements. In addition to that, data of EUSRS and SMS is aligned via batch process. And as I mentioned before, there is an intention to automate the synchronization and alignment of that data across SMS and USRS in the future. We don't believe that we are creating multiple sources as such, as long as the data is aligned. And as long as the IDs and the reference is the same across these systems. So that's how we've taken forward the implementation of those different solutions. So they exist because they provide different capabilities, and the data in it in different systems is aligned, and there is a unique reference, a unique ID that provides the one source of truth for IDMP. How long shall I go for the first one?
Yes,
How
please.
long XEVMPD is expected to be used? Do I understand correct that at the end of the full PMS implementation, there will be no need to add and update product data to Article 57, as it will go directly from EAF to other forms? Yes, so that is the intention. So once we have PMS fully implemented and we've been able to transition all of the submitters, marketing authorization holders from XEVMPD to PMS, we hope to discontinue XEVMPD submissions, and we hope to reuse the data from application forms in PMS. Uh, how long this will take, it will depend on different projects, such as electronic application forms, such as IRIS for centralized procedure management, and so on. So that will be part of the portfolio roadmap of replacing XEVMPD submission by PMS. How often does EMA recertify the organizations in OMS? Companies which were dissolved in 2020 are still active in the database. So typically, we created this year a process whereby we look at records that haven't been updated for more than 2 years. And every record that hasn't been updated for more than 2 years, we go and check to see if they're still active. If it happened that a particular company was dissolved in 2020, but it was updated for whatever reason in 2020 or 2021, then it still hasn't reached our radar, but it will eventually. Of course, companies can also let us know that a particular organization is no longer active, and we will, of course, inactivate it in OMS. So recertification, we look at things that haven't changed for more than 2 years. So eventually we'll get around to this particular example. Um, but companies can also let us know sooner that a particular organization is no longer active. Um, I think this is kind of repeated. How is EMA measuring data quality and ensuring the SPOR data is up to date? I've covered that. As change requests for OMS data can be placed by all registered users, it would be helpful that a registered key user of the company would be informed about impending changes or updated information. This is a long-standing request that we have, and we have discussed this with our key user group. We have a foreseen feature that we call subscription and notifications, that the users would subscribe to the records and companies and locations that they're interested in. And if there was a change, they would receive an email notification of that change. This is not a trivial change in OMS. It requires significant investment, and it hasn't yet been prioritized. So it's still not something that we can commit to delivering in 2023. The data of risk of supply shortage will be private data for only EMA, or will it be published for anyone? I'm not sure I follow the question with regards to SPOR. So in SPOR PMS, we will only have the marketing status, not any information on risk of supply shortage. This is another system, the supply management platform. And I'm afraid I do not know the details of this. We can take note of this question and provide it in the frequently asked questions later on. The webinar is called SPOR and XEVMPD Data Governance. However, you only explained SPOR data governance. No, I actually explained SPOR and XEVMPD data governance, so as much as possible. So the strategy aspect covers both SPOR and XEVMPD. The policies covers both SPOR and XEVMPD. The processes that I've explained of data stewardship, customer services, quality management apply to XEVMPD as well. The data governance structures, you will see that there is a business lead for XEVMPD. So actually, it was applicable to both. So apologies if I didn't always make it clear that this is applicable to both. Could you suggest how industry should be ready to comply with PMS? So this week's webinar was mostly focusing on operational work, not new developments in IT delivery. There's special dedicated webinars for that. However, I do believe that there is a specific part of the XEVMPD webinar this week that will cover how can industry be ready for PMS. So we will specifically cover from a data perspective and the rollout of EAF, which is the imminent change coming to users. Can you please let us know if the IDMP submission will work if we do not submit the golden loc ID, resulting of duplicate loc ID merged from our RIM tool, but a loc ID merged? Can we use any loc ID merged in IRIS and PLM portal? Should the existing UDRA document be updated with the golden loc ID? So I think this is about implementation of OMS IDs in PMS specifically. I believe this is what I believe. I believe that you can send any loc ID merged or unmerged, and in PMS we will identify and be able to reuse both. And that's what we're implementing in PMS. I'm not sure about the details in IRIS and the PLM portal. I can take note of that. And again, this is can be something that we can cover in an FAQ after the session. Can you please leave available the already answered question? I'm not sure I follow that.
Yeah, we will put them back. We're just for the we only addressing the questions that haven't been answered yet, but we will put them back from archive back to the screen. Thank you. And the last one, I'm not quite sure if this is
I'm
relevant.
not sure I understand this one. Does the wholesaler according to 52A AMG also need an account? I'm not sure I'm aware of what is 52A AMG referring
If
to.
if maybe you can, whoever raised the question, elaborate a little bit more what they mean, and we will answer in a chat. I don't know, Isabel, how you stand with the questions. If you would like to continue, there is quite a few, or we will address them via Q&A.
We still have some time, so I suppose I can
Okay,
go on,
sure.
but I see these are not being highly voted.
Yes, I
These
think
are questions
they
for
keep they keep
one
coming. Yeah,
specific users.
yeah. So yeah, let me just see what we can.
But I'm starting to sense that a lot of the questions are or will be covered in other webinars are not necessarily covering data governance which is the topic of today's webinar. So if you could kindly look at what I've presented and consider data governance questions, and also vote on questions that were previously posted.
So currently we have the first question that is visible. There is the highest vote at the moment, 6. So
So if I understand the first question, the certificate address in GMP differs somewhat from what's in OMS, as there is extra information in OMS. You're saying that you cannot submit a change request to OMS to remove it, and you're asking if we can modify and update the GMP certificates based on OMS address. So there's two aspects here. That in OMS we have standardized data and enriched data for different business processes. So indeed you will find data that might be more complete than the original GMP certificate. As far as I am aware, there is no need to update the GMP certificates as such, because the data is equivalent and is recognized to mean the same organization and the same site. So there is no strict need to update and modify the GMP certificate. But this is how to use OMS information in a given business process. I also understand that there are FAQs for this, so I would urge you to look up the specific rules around UDRA GMDP and how they expect to use the OMS data. But as far as I'm aware, there is no need, because the data is recognized to be equivalent and referring to the same organization and site.
okay, that was the first question, I presume, the answer.
SPOR data quality rules, example, legal entity position, visibility, and organization name lead to site GMP certificates not precisely matching legal entity names shown in the National Business Registry. How can this be improved? So if you have specific issues, you can of course always send us a ticket via the service desk for us to look at a specific example. And based on that, we will determine if we need to revisit a particular rule in Netherlands or Belgium specifically. We will have to discuss this with the key user group. Just on the basis of this particular statement on screen, I don't know exactly what we're talking about to know how we can improve it without looking at the example.
I have a feeling, Isabel, the majority questions are related to OMS, so I think we should take them up with the
OMS webinar.
OMS webinar. So I think I don't see anything else. I think maybe this one
So,
about the agile. I don't know if that's something you
do
can.
you see any risks in having SPOR data management priorities subject to EMA's agile transformation plans? Do you envisage any delays in PMS delivery, etc.? So SPOR data management priorities get, of course, influenced by the portfolio, as I mentioned, because we're doing some development of IT capabilities that are relevant and interesting to us, but also because we need to support other projects. So, of course, we take that and we get influenced by what is the priority for the network. But I don't necessarily see it as a risk. I see it as a natural thing. So we are here to provide a service, and we provide a service to the network and to the portfolio, which is what defines the priorities for the network. Uh, Delays on PMS delivery at the moment, so you'll have to refer to the PMS webinars. And I'm not sure how it links to the data management activities in SPOR.
Yeah, I think everything else is basically OMS related. So if you please attend, if you are attending the webinars on OMS, uh, please raise your questions there, or we will address it in the Q&A that we will publish later. So I
Okay,
don't see
so
any
we will
questions.
have a look at all of these questions and see what questions may not be relevant or addressed in subsequent webinars. Those questions we will reuse and update on our frequently FAQ document that is available in the SPOR portal. And because this has been the first webinar that we ever run on SPOR data governance, I'm not sure I covered exactly what you wanted to know or if you understood everything on data governance. So if you could bear with us for a few minutes, Miriam, I think it's time to run the survey to know how we can improve this webinar and make sure we do uh, an even better work in the second half of the year around this topic, or if there is an interest at all in this topic for the second half of the year.
Any input from you is really appreciated for us to improve. So thank you very much.
So please, you should see a survey being displayed in Slido, which is about your satisfaction with this specific webinar. Please give us your feedback so that we can take it on board and adjust and do an even better job in the second half of the year addressing all your questions. Miriam, can we see the results on screen
I
as
don't
they're
think so. This is all that is showing at the moment. Let me just see if I can do some magic here. Yes, there we are. So thank you. It looks really good. And obviously there we have some suggestions that we will certainly address.
so thank you. I think we can leave you to please provide all your suggestions so we can consider it in the next webinar. And I would like you to invite you to the remaining webinars this week. I believe we have a slide with that, just a kind reminder. And I suppose we can wrap up the webinar, but leave the Slido open for people to still provide feedback after the session.
Yes, we will leave the slide open for another 10 minutes so you can still provide your input.
So thank you very much for attending today's webinar. I hope we have clarified your questions, and I will surely look at the feedback from Slido and consider carefully your suggestions for improvement of the next webinar. So thank you very much, and looking forward to see you in the other webinars this week. Thanks and bye.